Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to What's Occurring. My comrade in arms, Jackie. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Wayne. How are you?
I'm very well.
I'm very hot at the moment. I'm in my conservatory, as you can see, with the door open. The lovely fresh air coming in.
Yeah, and I'm stuck in my office with my map of the world's vineyards behind me again. I don't seem to shift much out of here. I wonder why. I haven't got any wine in here, just for the record. Okay, guys, welcome to episode 8. And we're following on with a little bit of a theme through the What's Occurring programs. We're looking at today. We're going to look a little bit around coaching and adaptations and adoptions into the modern world, into the post-COVID world. But also we're bringing in some themes that we've spoken about around emotional intelligence, around how we can engage with our employees a lot more, how we can have empathy with our people that we work with, and how we are going to adapt in terms of the change going into whatever the change looks like going into the post-COVID world.
Absolutely, as we're currently adapting, aren't we?
Completely. I mean, just to bring this, a little bit. I mean, I've posted a couple of things on LinkedIn over the last couple of weeks. Certainly, I've focused a little bit on Kotter's 8-step model, which you guys can see now at home in terms of the steps that we have to go through. I mean, Jack, what sort of changes have we gone through as trainers? I mean, as corporate trainers, be classroom based to where we are at the moment.
Yeah, I think the immediate, I guess, change we had to sort of cope with was that we had a busy sort of calendar diary booked out for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and immediately having to cope with that initial cancellation or postponement, and trying to sort of, use that word, it's been postponed rather than cancelled, to help with the old mindset. I think was important. But yes, suddenly going from, being very busy in terms of what the calendar was saying, to suddenly having all this work postponed, and having to deal with that emotion at the time, I think was the initial, priority to just help with the mindset. But then thinking, once you've dealt with that sort of immediate sense of, oh my goodness, what do I do next? Where do I go with this? Which I think, when change happens, whether that's change in the workplace, change outside of work, it's that initial shock sometimes that you have to deal with and be able to deal with your own emotions. But then to be able to sit down and think, right, okay, what does this mean for our business? Does it mean I can't do any type of training? I can't do any type of coaching? Or does it mean, yes, I can, but I need to find a different way of doing that? And of course, for us and for, I think, the majority of freelance trainers and coaches, it's brought the virtual world alive for us, which for me, I think was a scary concept.
It is.
Not being a technical person at the beginning.
Oh, I think you said yourself short on this, but okay.
But having, my very first virtual session, I had the same nerves as I had years ago when I first stepped into the classroom environment. So having to sort of really deal with that, but I'm actually really enjoying it now. So something that was a fear and a worry is now something that I want to continue doing on a long-term basis. Of course, I think we both want to get back to the classroom and the engagement with people, but actually not losing sight of we can still continue to deliver virtual training on a long-term basis.
I did a training session this morning on unconscious bias. I did an existing client that's decided to procure me for 3 sessions, 2 in June, 1 in July, and the short bite-sized sessions, which I think from the initial change aspect of delivering this stuff, and I think what we need to be mindful of is people's idealisms going into this, sitting in front of a laptop, and most of them are at home at the moment. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of things to contend with.
Yeah.
We talk about the camera being on, the camera being off. We talk about being on mute until there is such a time where the questions are needed to be asked. And like I say to them, either use things like put your hand up. And people are, because this stuff is all new, even though we've gone through this, we've used this stuff for years. I mean, Skype has been around, I can't remember how long. And that's transitioned to things like, WhatsApp, where you can do instant messenger and you can bring everybody on board, to things like Zoom and Teams and WebEx. I absolutely adore WebEx. I think WebEx is one of the, Zoom, what we're using now, I think is great because everybody at home can also see the slide that we've got up around Kotler's 8-step model. And I think it's a little bit, and I'm a little bit, I'm going to bring the government into this a little bit because I'm when the government had to distance themselves, they went Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
He was in their constituents. They went Zoom. It just made total sense that everybody had to have that they followed the sort of, there was no expenses, that there was no travel. They were in the constituencies. They had to be at home. Well, some had to be at home. There was the odd exception that some had to. No, we won't name any names. But so there was that guided coalition. So what the government were doing was it was forced on them. So with that in mind,
mm-hmm.
when change is forced, I mean, change is adaptive. Change is necessary.
Yeah,
change
yeah. But a lot of changes within organisations can be forced, as you say.
Yeah. So when we think about, and this is coming back to what we spoke about last week about coaching. So when change isn't forced, so let's think about the way the government have done it and the way we've had to adapt as trainers. We can't go to a classroom. Well, not yet anyway. I mean, things are starting to open up a little bit. Social distancing, and I think with the classroom that we know with adults in there, isn't going to be anything like what kids have got to go through, because kids are, what kids are going to go through from schools, unis and colleges and things. But if change isn't forced on you, how do we adapt to it? What sort of coaching methodologies can people bring into it? What is the mindset that the manager has to have to bring the people with them?
Mm-hmm.
And when I say that it isn't forced, but situationally it's necessary, if that makes sense. Because there can be two different things, like lockdown and the way the government went. They had to go cold turkey, so they all had to stay in their constituencies. They couldn't come into Parliament. So what do you think about that?
I mean, I think you mentioned something there which made me think about, managers that may be coaching their teams. The manager themselves, I think, has to manage their own mindset, and I guess find the positives and the
desire.
Yeah, I guess that desire, but being able to really see that long-term vision, not just the short term, because the short term, I think, it can be a bit of a bumpy ride. But I think being able to be that long-term visionary, if you like, as a manager, to be able to see with the right support and with the right communication and with the right buy-in at every step of the way, how that change can bring about potential benefits in the long term. I think it's important for a manager to be able to recognise those benefits.
Absolutely. But
because otherwise, even without necessarily being consciously aware of it, as a manager, or just even ourselves, we can, I guess, give an inkling of what negativity or what negative thoughts or beliefs we might have through our body language when we're communicating with our team members.
So I'm going to bring in his fourth point there, which is the communicate the vision for the buy-in. So, people ask me all the time, what's the best way to initiate, sort of short-term goals and look at generate the short-term wins. And I keep telling them, before you can even get that, you have to evaluate your communication. And communication is a fantastic opportunity to reevaluate your relationship with people.
Mm-hmm.
All too often, whenever I go in and do effective communication, or whenever I could be in the middle of doing a leadership program or a leadership course, or it could be, and one of the courses that I've run, and I run it for one of my associate companies in London, is communicating in a technical environment. So there are a heck of a lot of things to consider. Communication's difficult enough as it is. To bring the technical aspect of it in, so things like project management, from a legal aspect of it, you know, I did one once for a patent company who were working as an intellectual property company, and they were an LLP, so they were a limited liability partnership. So there was, you know, and it was a heck of a lot of sort of head down, sort of in-depth work that they had to consider, and to then communicate with the rest of the staff, the sort of the sort of the support staff, the admin staff, and the people who run the office for them, and they had to keep them abreast of what was actually physically happening on it.
But they are challenges when you've got, you know, people within the same working environment. They may be working in a different department, but they're working in the same building. What do you see, Wyn, as being some of the key challenges facing organisations and managers currently when they may have, you know, a considerable number of their staff working from home? So then they can't physically see them, you know, every minute of every day. You know, the organisation is going through the changes that we're all going through currently. They've got teams that are working from home that are having to deal with their emotions and their thoughts about those changes. And
motivations, I think motivators as well.
Yeah. So what would you see as the current challenges with people working from home? Bring in, obviously, Cotter's 8-step change modelling into this. What would you say needs to be the key things that managers particularly need to be doing in order to bring their teams with them through the changes and the future changes when potentially they've got the sort of challenge of remote working?
I think, you know, one of the hardest things about remote management anyway is engagement.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of your emotional intelligence, but your relationship awareness, your relationship management, your situational perspective in terms of how you maintain that engagement. Is it too much, not enough? If it's too much, then people feel as if you're micromanaging them.
Yeah.
And then you've got to build up that teamwork, that level of trust has to be at the forefront of everything that you're doing. So you're looking at, you know, what empowerment you can give these people. You've got to then have that. I mean, you know, I think the two key things for anybody anyway on a remote basis is engagement and enablement. So if you're engaged and you've got that balance right, do they have the right tools to do the right job at the right time? Because at the moment we seem to be in an adaptive zone. So we've gone camping. We haven't got any of the tent posts, but what we've used is we've raided the cupboards at home. We've got we've got forks and knives and stuff to hold the tent posts out. And as we've got to the woods, what we've decided, well, we haven't got any stuff to keep the tent up, so we'll go rummaging now. We'll have a look in the woods and think, right, let's get some sticks. We'll bring them back because they'll do for the moment. We've got a bit of sellotip, so we can get a cross pole. We can get. There's me talking about my time.
I'm intrigued to know where you've been camping when.
Not for a long time, yeah. When my wife found out that she couldn't plug her straighteners in anywhere, she went, never doing this again.
I don't blame her for 1 minute.
yeah. I'll have to share some of the pictures of Jane in 3 sleeping bags, in the middle of summer, in 3 sleeping bags, in a tent, with me lying on top of my foam bed, foam mattress, whatever it was, which is only that big, and I was absolutely in heaven. It was just perfect temperature, but Jane was freezing, never again.
So how would you coach Jane then to come along with you and buy into this vision of your camping?
Oh, you know, I'm going to go back to Cotter's step 7: never let up. You know, look at quick wins to generate those short-term benefits, and again, it's coming back to we are creatures of habit. So, you know, can she live without her straighteners? There are things. So, what are the risks associated with change? What are the risks associated with not engaging that emotional intelligence that her and I have got? and knowing what her anxieties are. But if I don't then look at doing anything about that, okay, would it be that, is it that essential that she has straighteners? Then fine, then look at, I'm using that as a very, very poor example, but bringing that into the equation, but never letting up on it. So looking at what you can influence and what you can't influence. And again, to bring in maybe, you know, and I use quite a lot of Stephen Covey's circle of influence in so many of my training communities.
Yeah, I do as well.
I don't think anybody can function without it, because look at what you can influence, being mindful of what your concerns are. But what I also tell people is there are going to be things that are going to sit outside of the concerns that you can't do anything about at all.
But I think the reality is, Wyn, certainly through you know, experience of working in many organisations, that when you start to have those type of coaching type conversations, you start to realise that people spend probably the most of their time and effort and energy and mindset thinking about the things during change that they can't influence, they can't control.
Completely.
And that in itself, doesn't it? That in itself brings the negativity and then, you know, the fear and the anxiety, as well as people. You mentioned about, you know, we're creatures of habit. We absolutely are. The reality is that life is about change. We weren't doing the same things that we were doing when we were 5 years of age, even though we might want to, you know. So life, the reality is about change. Every single day we go through change of some sort. But people often focus on the changes that they didn't like.
Yeah.
The bad experiences, you know, particularly in organisations, they think, oh yeah, when we went through that change 6 months ago, you know, that wasn't you know, a positive experience. We didn't get the outcomes we wanted. So why should this change be any different to that?
To bring in on that, and I totally agree with that, because with that in mind, there's so many learns, and the irony is that we focus on things that don't go right within change as the negative, where from my experience of change, I mean, I worked in finance for 25 years in the financial services world. You know, I worked for one of the biggest financial services organizations in the UK. And, you know, what I transitioned through my career, you know, and I went through pre-email to leaving with the using sort of Twitter accounts and closed Twitter accounts and the social media aspects that we've got. These can help. But what my point is that we never learned enough what we attributed with some of the changes that didn't go so well, and they don't. And if I'm honest, I don't know the statistics with change and how we even coach people getting into that. And I think if we can take the learns from yesteryear, but get those engagements. So, you know, when we talk about the things, what he talks about in stage 4 there, he says, you know, communicate the vision for the buy-in. Well, the vision for the buy-in could be anything to do with the successes of failures or things that didn't go so well. But how can we change those? How can we adapt and make those better next time? Is it because...
But also why? Also knowing why. I think every employee, when a change is being communicated to them, the key questions they have in their minds that they want answers to is why.
Yeah.
Why does this change need to happen? And businesses, I think, can be really great at saying, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the starting place of any conversation has to be why. Why is this change necessary? Yeah. And, you know, the step there about step 1, establishing a sense of urgency. For me, that's where the why starts. Why does this need to happen? To be able to help people to recognize that if we keep doing what we've been doing for the last X amount of months or years, this is going to be the consequence of it.
I had a conversation with someone, an old friend, and someone I've worked with this week. Oh, what day we Wednesday? I think it was Monday. I spoke to Andrea, and because of the change that we are going through on the virtual world, there's a lot of I'm catching up with a lot of people that I haven't for a while, we're practicing. You know, you and I started doing it with all of this virtual stuff back in March. You know, flipping heck, what we're gonna look at in terms of right Teams, Zoom, WebEx.
Mm-hmm.
How do we use it? You know, okay, you and I were maybe a little bit ahead of the game because we'd been using it a while before anyway. But this now allowed us to practice, and then all of a sudden, what's come off this is what's occurring. Because I thought, well, let's just put this stuff down and get it out there so people can see. But you're right, because what people are trying to do, they're trying to get to level 3 before creating that guiding coalition.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, and it would be interesting to see what companies and what changes companies have gone through to what the learns that they've experienced at that early part of any change that they've engaged, and what has gone wrong at that stage, where sometimes instead of reevaluating it and taking a step back of it, thinking, well, no, let's force this through,
Mm-hmm.
without getting all of those Q&As and all of those engagements. So, you know, coming back to what you mentioned earlier, what is one of the key things you can do with remote leadership and remote management of people? And certainly now, and I think even if you've got no experience of remote management, you have now, because I don't think it's very rare. There's not many companies out there now that employees are able to go into the workspace, and that they've got all of their employees into the workspace, purely simply down to distancing and that level of requirement.
Yeah, absolutely.
So finding out what the engagement was right at that outset and what level of efficiency. So if companies are going through this, how do they measure the success on each of the stages but establishing that sense of urgency? Okay, they need to. And what Andrea and I were chatting about on Monday, which will resonate with you as well, is why Woolworths was so successful when they first kicked in. I think it was about the 50s or the 60s.
Yeah, I saw your post about that the other day.
To the point of where it didn't, it doesn't exist now.
Yeah.
So what went on? They didn't change; they stayed the same.
Yeah, and it'll be very interesting, I think, to see those companies that I think thrive beyond lockdown, because they will recognize that it's not about going back to what was.
No, that's right.
You know, it's a phrase that's been bandied about a lot, the new norm. But that new norm will be an ever-changing new norm. It's not going to stay the same. Nothing stays the same. But I think companies that are just eager to get back to how it was and bring everybody back to, working in the office, etc., as if nothing had happened, I think may actually struggle over those businesses that recognize, you know what? That there's been some real positives from giving people the opportunity and flexibility to work from home.
I commented on a post last week. I think you liked it as well. I can't remember, and I should have probably made a note of that. That in terms of the aspect of change and the new norms, and there was something about the 91% of us that accepting that tomorrow, or the new norm, or whenever that is going to be, actually, because we don't even know when it's going to be, that 91% of us have accepted that the new norm doesn't or shouldn't or can't be, or we don't want it to be anything like it used to be. Well, I don't. I want to be, I'm in that 91% because I'm more than happy, like you are, to adapt to the new world.
This was a change that was forced upon everybody's lives.
Completely. And we've adapted and adopted.
It's about whether it's personal or whether it's business related.
Completely.
It's about looking at where are the opportunities going forward.
Yeah.
Do we want to bring everybody back to working exactly how they were before, or can we actually take some of the benefits here that we've now realized, and we've only realized it. I mean, I've got to be honest, I did not think about adding virtual training to my business before this happened. I was doing virtual coaching.
Yeah.
But for me, training was in the same room with my delegates, and having that engagement. But do I now see this forced change that we've all, had upon us? Do I see it as a complete negative, or do I actually see it as, it's opened up some opportunities that otherwise I wouldn't have realized? And I really hope that organizations out there are also thinking the same in terms of what opportunities has this brought about for our business that we can really drive forward. I think coaching is a great way of achieving that vision and bringing people along with you, because coaching helps people to recognize the way they're feeling and how to manage their emotions, but also it gives them the opportunity to feel empowered to come up with their ideas. Because I think any change, model that we're talking about, or any change process, it's about people need to feel that the change isn't being done to them, the change is being done with them.
Absolutely, and I totally agree. And there's something that you and I have come up with that we're launching towards the end of July as well. I'm gonna get that in there about there's an awful lot of people going to go through job changes over the next couple of months. Well, actually, you have gone through it already. Obviously, furlough is still in until October, I believe. But what you and I are putting together is a seminar that we're going to be, it's going to be an all-day event, and we're going to get people on. We're going to be inviting, we're going to be posting it out on LinkedIn to start with, to get people to start to think about their careers, their next jobs, because 25 years in one company, I'm doing something totally different now, but it's something that I love and enjoy. So when we think about what your new role is going to be, what the skills and the tool set and the tools and things that you're going to be needing. So
absolutely, that's another example of very often that change, through redundancy may be forced upon you. I don't know whether I'm guessing, because you've obviously been in the L&D world the same as me, that the L&D world, you get used to changes and redundancies. But those redundancies are not always chosen redundancies.
No, that's right.
So I think, being able to be equipped, I think, to be able to manage the emotions that you go through when you're made redundant, but also being able to recognize, how can I take back control of this? What's my next step in terms of my career? And I think that's what we want to achieve from this event, isn't it? That we help people to recognize that however you may be feeling right now, where are the opportunities? How can we prepare you for your next success?
I'm thinking about, because some people will have been in jobs short, medium, and long term, with an aspiration potentially being a long term, even longer. So what we want people to start to think about is looking at this Courtners model and what Courtners change model is. That may be for a business perspective, but it can also be for your individual as well. So thinking about, okay, we have a sense of urgency. You need to get your CV in place. You need to get your interview skills in place. You need to there's a lot of considerations you have to have in place in readiness for that. So I think if whoever's watching this, just keep an eye out for Jackie and my posts.
Yeah, absolutely, because the support is there, and we certainly want to provide that support. I think, I really enjoyed our conversation again with, had no real, idea which direction the conversation is going to go in, because we never have scripts.
No, it's not.
We did have a nice, change model to focus on. But I love the fact that we can just share ideas and thoughts with each other without any sort of, scripting involved in this. And I think it helps us to get to know each other better, as well as being able to share our thoughts with people who watch these.
And if these posts and things do help, obviously they go up live on both our YouTube channels, plus on LinkedIn. There's a lot of cross sort of syncing, liking, and sharing, and all the things that we do on social media. And I think feedback is great. I mean, if people want a topic or anything that they want us to discuss, or if anybody wants to come on, we've got a couple of guests lined up. We've actually interviewed someone else. Gary's been interviewed and this week now, and obviously we're going to get his post out about working in a call center and about sort of adaptive changes that some of these guys are going to have to potentially go through, because the irony is, although they are remote as such, but they're still working in close proximity to people, and because these organizations, what adaptive changes that they're going to be going through, but more on that later on in the week. So
I think particularly I'd love people to start giving us some ideas of topics that they'd like us to talk about, because even though hopefully we're choosing subjects that do have an impact on us all, it would be great to get a little bit of guidance, I guess, from you know, the people that are watching this in terms of what would matter to them, what could we sort of, you know, say or provide our thoughts on that would help them in their situation.
Plus, we could even get a special guest on who might be an expert on it, because although you and I lecture on this stuff pretty much daily and some of these topics, that, you know, like we got Tracy on board, we've had Julian on board, we've had Rob on board, and we've had some real fun, but we've had some real experts sort of perspectives on things as well. So, Jack, as always, thoroughly enjoyed this session, and I hope everybody that's watching has as well.
I'm going to enjoy some sunshine now. You've had me cooped up in my conservatory.
I've been in the office way too long today, so I really do need some photosynthesis. So
look forward to chatting again soon.
Take it easy, Jack. Take it easy, everybody, and see you soon.
Bye.
Ta-da.